I'm trying to get back in the habit of using a journal as a regular organizer and a planner, but I have failed at this many times in the past. I've failed for a number of different reasons. I've tried a lot of different types of notebooks and a lot of different strategies, and none of them really stuck for me. It always felt like I was having to put in more work to stick with my system than having the system work for me. There's a few different reasons why I've failed. The first one is that having 3+ notebooks is not practical and not a good solution. So I used to try to have a different notebook for every different purpose, like one for a certain class, one as a planner, and then one for a brain dump and just notes I have. And that is an unsustainable practice for me because carrying around 3 or 4 different notebooks does not help me at all. And it also makes it really difficult to reflect on your progress in anything because you have to go to each specific notebook to figure out what was in it and see your progress and that kind of thing. So I found out that multiple notebooks just did not work for me at all. The other issue I've had is that I didn't use an index for a lot of my notebooks. So I just have pages and pages of notes, but I have no way to figure out what is in that notebook except to skim through every page and try to figure out where I put down this idea that I had, or when was the last time I worked on such and such. It's really hard for me to keep track that way. So I definitely know that I need to keep an index so that I can remember where my notes are and so that I can do some regular reflection practice and just figure out what type of progress I'm making towards my goals. Another reason I've failed at journaling so many times in the past is because I always tried to be very artsy about it. I saw pictures online and it looked so beautiful what other people were doing, and I am just not a skilled artist or a skilled drawer. So trying to make a notebook that looks beautiful but doesn't work for me is just not going to be a practical solution. And I found that the more effort I put into trying to make things pretty, the more frustrating the system became for me, and then I just neglected to use it altogether. So it was a tough realization, but I'm just not going to be the person with the beautiful notebook. I'll just be the person with the organized notebook. So based on all those failures, I came up with a couple of things that are really important to me for a system. I need a really well-defined system that I can stick to. I also need a way to have my random scattered brain dump thoughts in the same place as my well-structured and organized notes without the two conflicting with each other. The other thing I needed is a way to see my yearly schedule and a way to see a month-to-month schedule so I can figure out when the upcoming deadlines are. And this is especially important for me in terms of conferences or journals that I'd like to submit to. I really need a way to visually see those deadlines over the course of the year so that I can plan better. The other thing I needed was some flexibility in creating things that I personally need. Sometimes I set goals that have nothing to do with my career and nothing to do with exercise, and I want a place for those. I also want to be able to easily track my research projects and the different things I'm working on for my PhD, and I want to be able to reflect on those really easily. So the last thing I need is an index, and I have to be able to stick to the index. Okay, so when I first heard of bullet journaling, I thought it was all about making pages look really beautiful and artsy, and I had no idea that there was a system behind it. It turns out there's a whole book about a system that works, and the author uses that system, and it's all part of his own experience working with kind of a scattered brain and a really busy schedule. And I think this is a really useful method to try out and to stick to if you can. And so I'm going to give that a go over the next few months and see how this system works for me and see if I can stick to it, since I haven't really been able to stick to anything else in the past. But I do love the practice of journaling and reflecting on those notes. I definitely recommend getting a copy of this book if you can. You can always borrow it from your local library. I actually borrowed it from the university library, and most schools, if they don't have the book in their collection, they have a way that you can request to get a copy of the book so that it's available in the library collection. I'll also put a link to it below if you want to purchase the book. I personally just took it out from my local library to see if it would work for me first. One of the things I really like in the book is that the author talks about how you really don't need a special... I have a dog visitor. puppy. Can you go downstairs, please? One of the things I loved about the book is that the author's like, you really don't need a fancy or expensive notebook to stick to this. You can use a regular spiral bound notebook, a composition notebook, just anything that allows you to write down and then reflect on things in that notebook. So it doesn't have to be something fancy. Personally, I did get a very fancy one, but that's just because I like writing in nice notebooks, and I tend to use very inky pens like Sharpies and markers, and I really just like it when the pages don't bleed through. It's as simple as that. Okay, so I mentioned that I am going to be setting up this notebook and using it over the next couple of months. I'll give you some regular updates on what kinds of stuff I've added and how it's working for me. But to start things off, I'll show you the section of the book where I'm gonna follow basically the outline that the author gives and do that in my new notebook, and I'll show the notebook alongside as well. If you bought a nice notebook and you're worried about ruining it by making a mistake, you can always use a pencil and then just draw over it with your pen after when you're satisfied with what you have. But honestly, I think that we should both just accept that we're going to make mistakes and that it's okay if it's not perfect. Obsessing over every little detail is exactly how you discourage yourself from following any type of system in the first place. So I think maybe we can both try to turn down the type A a little bit and just be okay with making some mistakes. You know who you are.